The email notification pinged at 11:47 p.m., lighting up Ashley's iPad screen like a neon sign in our darkened bedroom. I wasn't supposed to see it, but insomnia had become my unwelcome companion these past few weeks, and the blue glow caught my attention immediately. VIP Leadership Mixer, Community Center, Saturday 7 p.m. Richard Hall cordially invites you and your +1. +1. That was rich. Ashley had mentioned nothing about any work event, let alone one where I'd be welcome. In our 12 years of marriage, I'd learned to read between the lines of my wife's carefully curated stories, and this particular line screamed volumes. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Mark Avery, that's me. 42 years old, former Marine turned self-employed contractor in the sleepy town of Millbrook, Maine. Population 3,847 on a good day when the summer folks aren't fleeing back to Boston. I fix things for a living. Broken pipes, sagging porches, cracked foundations. Lately, I'd been wondering if I could fix broken marriages too. Ashley stirred beside me, her auburn hair catching the moonlight streaming through our bedroom window. She looked peaceful, innocent even. The same woman who'd stolen my heart at a college party 20 years ago, back when her laugh was genuine and her ambitions didn't involve climbing corporate ladders by stepping on the people who loved her. "Can't sleep again?" she murmured, not opening her eyes. "Just thinking about work tomorrow. The Henderson job is running behind schedule." It wasn't entirely a lie. I was thinking about work, specifically about how Ashley's work seemed to be consuming more and more of her evenings, weekends, and attention. Her marketing firm, housed in a converted mill downtown, had become her second home. Or maybe our actual home had become her second choice. She replied, already drifting back to sleep. I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to my workshop in the basement. The familiar smell of sawdust and WD-40 greeted me like an old friend. Down here, surrounded by tools that served their intended purpose and materials that behaved according to predictable laws of physics, the world made sense. My phone buzzed, a text from Tommy Brennan, my oldest friend and the town's best mechanic. "Beer tomorrow night? Haven't seen you in weeks." I stared at the message, realizing Tommy was right. When had I become so isolated? When had my world shrunk to just work and waiting for Ashley to come home from her increasingly mysterious evening meetings? The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical for October in Maine. Ashley was already dressed in her sharp navy suit, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She stood at our kitchen island, scrolling through her phone while nursing a cup of coffee. "Morning, beautiful," I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like expensive perfume and ambition. "Morning. I'll be late tonight. Client dinner with the Peterson Group." "On a Friday? That's dedication." She looked up sharply, as if searching my face for hidden meaning. "It's a big account, Mark. This could mean a promotion." "I'm sure Richard appreciates your commitment." Richard Hall, Ashley's boss, mentor, and the man whose name had been creeping into our conversations with increasing frequency over the past 6 months. 43 years old, divorced, and according to Ashley, a marketing genius who'd transformed their small firm into a regional powerhouse. He says I have real potential for leadership. I'm sure he does. This time Ashley caught the edge in my voice. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, just agreeing with you." She studied me for another moment, then grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Don't wait up." After she left, I sat in the silence of our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together. The farmhouse-style table I'd made from reclaimed barnwood, the custom cabinets I'd installed during our 3rd year of marriage, the window seat where we used to drink coffee and plan our future. When had planning our future become her planning her future? My phone rang. Mrs. Langley from next door, probably wanting me to fix something. At 78, she treated me like her personal handyman, but I didn't mind. She paid well and always had interesting gossip. "Mark, dear, could you look at my garbage disposal? It's making that awful grinding noise again." "I'll be right over, Mrs. Langley." Her kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and cat food, a combination that somehow worked. While I worked under her sink, she chattered about neighborhood news, town politics, and who was sleeping with whom. Mrs. Langley knew everything that happened in Millbrook, usually before the people involved knew it themselves. "That wife of yours is certainly ambitious," she said, seemingly out of nowhere. I paused, wrench in hand. "How do you mean?" "Oh, just that she's been working such long hours. I see her car leaving at all hours, sometimes not coming home until very late." "The marketing business is demanding." "I'm sure it is, especially with that handsome boss of hers, Richard something or other. I met him at the grocery store last week, charming man. He mentioned how much he enjoys working with Ashley." I finished tightening the disposal's mounting assembly, my jaw clenched. "There you go, Mrs. Langley. Should be good as new." "You're such a treasure, Mark. I don't know what I'd do without you. Some women don't appreciate what they have right in front of them." That evening, I sat at the Lantern, Millbrook's only decent bar, nursing a beer and waiting for Tommy. The place hadn't changed in 20 years. Same scarred wooden bar, same neon beer signs, same collection of locals who'd been telling the same stories since the Clinton administration. Tommy arrived at 8, still in his coveralls from the garage. We'd been friends since high school, bonded by our shared love of fixing things and our mutual inability to understand women. "You look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Thanks. You always know just what to say." "Seriously, what's eating you? You've been a ghost lately." I took a long pull of my beer, considering how much to share. Tommy was loyal to a fault, but I wasn't ready to voice my suspicions about Ashley. Not yet. Just work stress, and Ashley's been putting in crazy hours at the firm. "That marketing place downtown? I heard they landed some big contracts." "Yeah, that's what she tells me." Tommy studied my face. But nothing. Everything's fine." "Mark, we've been friends for 25 years. I know when you're full of shit." Before I could respond, the bar's door opened and Julia Martinez walked in. She worked at Ashley's firm as a graphic designer, and we'd met at a few company parties over the years. She spotted us and waved, then hesitated before walking over. "Mark, I didn't expect to see you here. How are you?" "Good, Julia. You remember Tommy?" "Of course. Mind if I join you for a minute? I'm waiting for my date to show up." She slid in next to Tommy, and I noticed she seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap. "How are things at the firm?" I asked. "Busy. Really busy. Your wife is amazing. She's been putting in incredible hours on the Peterson account." "So I hear." "Richard has her working closely with him on the strategy. They make a good team." Something in her tone made me look up. Julia was staring at her hands, not meeting my eyes. "A good team," I repeated. "Yeah, very collaborative." Tommy, bless him, seemed oblivious to the undercurrents. "Must be nice having a boss who appreciates good work." "Oh, Richard definitely appreciates Ashley's work. They've been spending a lot of time together, late nights, weekend planning sessions, very hands-on approach to management." Now she was looking directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes, pity, maybe, or warning. "Well," I said carefully, "Ashley's always been dedicated." "She certainly is. Anyway, I should go. My date just texted. He's running late. Good seeing you both." After she left, Tommy and I sat in silence for a moment. "That was weird," he finally said. "Yeah." "She seemed like she was trying to tell you something." "Yeah." "Want to talk about it?" I finished my beer and stood up. "Not yet, but thanks for listening anyway." That night, I lay awake until I heard Ashley's car in the driveway at 1:23 a.m. She slipped into bed quietly, smelling like wine and that same expensive perfume, now mixed with something else. Cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "How was dinner?" I whispered. "Long. Productive. The Petersons are very demanding clients." "I'm sure they are." She was asleep within minutes, but I stared at the ceiling until dawn, my mind racing. 20 years of marriage, and I was becoming a stranger in my own life. The woman beside me felt like someone I'd never met, and the man I'd always been, trusting, loyal, willing to give the benefit of the doubt, felt like a fool. But Mark Avery wasn't just a fool. He was a Marine who'd served 2 tours in Afghanistan, a businessman who'd built a successful contracting company from nothing, and a man who'd spent his entire adult life solving problems. It was time to start solving this one. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made Maine postcards famous. Ashley spent the morning at her laptop, supposedly preparing for the Peterson presentation, while I worked on refinishing an antique dresser in my workshop. The repetitive motion of sanding helped calm my racing thoughts. Around 4 o'clock, Ashley announced she was going upstairs to get ready for the work event she'd suddenly remembered to mention. "I thought you might want to come," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "It's just a networking thing, but Richard thought it would be good for me to bring a +1, show that I'm well-rounded, have a stable home life." "Interesting, very interesting." "I'd love to come," I said. "What's the dress code?" "Business casual, nothing too fancy." I showered and put on my best khakis and a navy blazer, the same outfit I'd worn to her company Christmas party last year, where Richard Hall had shaken my hand and called me the man behind the woman. At the time, I'd thought he was being complimentary. The Millbrook Community Center sat on Main Street like a brick monument to small-town civic pride. Built in 1952, it hosted everything from town meetings to wedding receptions. Tonight, it buzzed with the energy of Millbrook's business elite, all 37 of them. Ashley gripped my arm as we walked in, her fingers tense through my jacket sleeve. "Remember, this is important for my career. Richard will be watching how I handle myself." "I'll be the perfect husband," I assured her. Richard Hall stood near the makeshift bar, holding court with a small group that included the mayor and the president of the Chamber of Commerce. He was exactly what central casting would order for successful businessman: tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, confident smile. When he saw Ashley, his face lit up like she was the guest of honor. "Ashley, you look absolutely stunning." He kissed her cheek, letting his hand linger on her waist just a fraction too long. "And Mark, good to see you again." His handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Up close, I could see the calculation in his eyes, the way he sized people up and categorized them. I'd seen that look before, in Afghanistan, on the faces of men who thought they held all the cards. "Thanks for including me," I said. "Ashley's told me so much about the Peterson project." "Has she?" "Well, she's been instrumental in developing our strategy. We've spent countless hours working through every detail." "I'm sure you have." Ashley shot me a warning look, but Richard seemed oblivious to any subtext. "Can I get you both drinks? Ashley, your usual?" He knew her usual. Of course he did. While Richard fetched drinks, I scanned the room. Julia Martinez stood near the dessert table, talking to Melissa Chen, Ashley's best friend and the firm's lead designer. Both women kept glancing in our direction. "Mark!" Melissa approached with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So nice to see you here. Ashley wasn't sure you'd be able to make it." "Wouldn't miss it. It's important to support Ashley's career." "Of course. You're such a supportive husband. Not all men are comfortable with successful wives." Before I could respond, Richard returned with drinks, wine for Ashley, beer for me. Domestic beer, not even a good brand. The kind you'd serve someone you didn't think would know the difference. "So, Mark," Richard said, Ashley tells me you're in construction? Contracting, residential mostly, some commercial renovation. That's practical, very hands-on work. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. I'd heard it before from Ashley's colleagues, the polite dismissal of blue-collar work by people who'd never built anything more substantial than a PowerPoint presentation. Someone has to keep the world from falling down, I said. Richard laughed, but his eyes stayed cold. Indeed. Well, if you'll excuse us, I need to introduce Ashley to the Peterson Group representatives. They specifically requested to meet her. He guided Ashley away with his hand on the small of her back, leaving me standing alone with my cheap beer. I watched them work the room together, Richard whispering in Ashley's ear, Ashley laughing at his comments. They moved like a team, like a couple. They make quite a pair, don't they? I turned to find Julia beside me, holding a glass of wine and wearing an expression I couldn't quite read. They work well together, I said carefully. Oh, they definitely work well together. Very closely. Richard has taken such a personal interest in Ashley's development. That's good management. Is it? I suppose that depends on your definition of management. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Ashley and Richard charm the Peterson Group. Mark, Julia said quietly, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question caught me off guard. That's a strange thing to ask. Is it? You just seem, I don't know, like you're not really here. I looked at her more carefully. Julia was probably 35, attractive in an understated way, with kind eyes and an honest face. She'd always been friendly at company events, but tonight felt different. I'm here, I said. But are you happy? Before I could answer, the lights dimmed and Richard took the microphone. He launched into a speech about teamwork, excellence, and the bright future of Hall Marketing Solutions. He praised several employees by name, saving Ashley for last. And finally, I want to recognize Ashley Avery, whose dedication and creativity have been absolutely essential to our recent success. Ashley has shown the kind of commitment that sets true professionals apart from the merely competent. Applause filled the room. Ashley beamed, looking more radiant than I'd seen her in months. In fact, Richard continued, Ashley and I have been working so closely on the Peterson account that I sometimes forget where my ideas end and hers begin. It's that kind of seamless collaboration that drives results. More applause. I clapped too, playing my part. After the speech, people began to mingle again. I found myself talking to Tom Peterson, the client everyone was so eager to impress. He was a straightforward guy, maybe 60, who'd built a successful chain of hardware stores. Your wife's quite impressive, he said. Richard speaks very highly of her. She's talented. And you're a contractor? That's honest work. I started in hardware, so I appreciate people who work with their hands. It pays the bills. Richard mentioned you might be interested in bidding on some renovation work for our new stores. This was news to me. He did? Said you were looking to expand into commercial work. We've got 3 new locations opening next year. That's generous of him to think of me. Tom handed me his business card. Give me a call next week. Always happy to work with local contractors. As Tom walked away, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Richard had appeared beside me, smiling his practiced smile. I see you met Tom Peterson. Good man. Very down-to-earth for someone worth 8 figures. He mentioned some renovation work. I thought you might be interested. Ashley's success is good for everyone, don't you think? Rising tide lifts all boats. That's very thoughtful. I take care of the people who matter to me, and Ashley matters very much. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meaning. She matters to me too, I said. Of course she does. You're her husband. The way he said husband made it sound like a consolation prize. The evening wound down around 10 o'clock. Ashley found me near the coat check, flushed with success and wine. Ready to go? she asked. Whenever you are. We said our goodbyes, Richard kissing Ashley's cheek again and shaking my hand with that same calculating grip. We should do this again soon, he said. Maybe dinner next week? I'd love to continue our conversation about the Peterson expansion. That sounds wonderful, Ashley replied before I could respond. In the car, Ashley chattered excitedly about the evening's conversations, the connections she'd made, the opportunities Richard was creating for her. I listened with half an ear, my mind replaying the evening's subtle interactions. Richard really went out of his way to include you tonight, she said as we pulled into our driveway. Did he? The Peterson job, introducing you to people, he didn't have to do that. No, he didn't. You could be more grateful. I turned off the engine and looked at her. In the dim light from our porch, she looked beautiful and distant, like someone I'd once known well but hadn't seen in years. Grateful, I repeated. Yes. Richard is trying to help your business. The least you could do is appreciate it. I appreciate a lot of things, Ashley, maybe more than you realize. Something in my tone made her look at me sharply, but I was already getting out of the car. Inside, she went upstairs to change while I poured myself a real beer and stood at the kitchen window looking out at the darkness. My reflection stared back at me, a man in his 40s, still in decent shape despite the gray creeping into his hair, wearing a blazer that had seen better days. When had I become invisible in my own life? When had my wife started looking at other men the way she used to look at me? And when had I started pretending not to notice? Ashley came downstairs in her silk pajamas, looking softer, more like the woman I'd married. I'm sorry if I seemed ungrateful, she said. Tonight was just really important to me. I know it was. Richard believes in me. He sees potential that other people miss. What kind of potential? Leadership potential. He thinks I could run my own team within a year, maybe even become a partner eventually. And what do you think? I think he might be right. She moved closer, putting her arms around my waist. But none of that matters if we're not solid. You know that, right? I looked down at her upturned face, searching for the truth in her eyes. Do we? Are we solid? Of course we are. Why would you ask that? Just checking. She kissed me then, soft and familiar, and for a moment I could almost believe that everything was the way it used to be. Almost. But as we headed upstairs together, I couldn't shake the image of Richard's hand on her back, the way she'd lit up when he praised her, the casual intimacy of their interactions. Some problems couldn't be fixed with the right tools and enough patience. Some problems required a different kind of solution entirely. Monday morning brought the first real cold snap of the season. I was replacing a broken window at the Hendersons when my phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. Working late again tonight. Peterson presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up. The third, working late, message in a week. I finished installing the window and drove downtown, parking across the street from Hall Marketing Solutions. The converted mill building looked impressive in the afternoon light, all red brick and tall windows that spoke of prosperity and ambition. Ashley's silver Honda sat in the parking lot next to Richard's black BMW. I waited, watching the building's windows for signs of life. At 6:30, most of the lights went out. At 7:15, I saw two figures silhouetted against the third-floor windows, the executive floor where Richard's office was located. They stood close together, looking at something on what was probably his desk. As I watched, Richard put his arm around Ashley's shoulders, pointing at whatever they were reviewing. She leaned into him, comfortable with the contact. I drove home and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to that silhouette. By the time Ashley's car pulled into our driveway at 11:45, I'd made a decision. Tuesday, while Ashley was at her Peterson presentation, I drove to Tommy's garage. He was under the hood of a Ford pickup, cursing creatively at whatever mechanical problem had defeated him. Need a favor, I said. Name it. I need to clone a phone. Tommy straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. Come again? Ashley's phone. I need to see her messages. Jesus, Mark. Are you sure you want to go down that road? I'm already on that road. I just need to know where it leads. Tommy studied my face for a long moment. You know I did 2 years of computer science before I dropped out to fix cars, right? I was hoping. And you know that what you're asking is probably illegal? Probably. And that if Ashley finds out, your marriage is over? My marriage might already be over. Tommy sighed and walked to his office, a cluttered space that smelled like coffee and motor oil. He pulled out a laptop and a collection of cables. Family plan? He asked. Yeah. Same Apple ID for cloud backup? I think so. Then we don't need her phone. We just need her backup password. It took 3 tries, but I guessed correctly. Ashley used the same password for everything, a combination of her maiden name and our wedding date. Within minutes, Tommy had accessed her cloud backup and was downloading her recent messages. You sure about this? He asked one more time. I'm sure. He turned the laptop toward me. Then you might want to sit down. The messages were all there, going back 3 months. Professional at first, then gradually more personal. Richard complimenting her work, her appearance, her intelligence, Ashley responding with increasing warmth and familiarity. Then, 2 weeks ago, the tone shifted completely. Richard, dinner tonight was amazing. You're amazing. Ashley, I haven't felt this way in years. Richard, Mark doesn't deserve you. Ashley, I know, but it's complicated. Richard, it doesn't have to be. I scrolled through more messages, each one a small knife twist. Plans to meet, complaints about me, intimate details about our marriage that Ashley had shared with her boss and lover. The most recent exchange was from yesterday, during her Peterson presentation. Ashley, he's getting suspicious. Richard, let him. What's he going to do about it? Ashley, you don't know Mark. He's not as passive as he seems. Richard, I'm not worried about your husband. Ashley, maybe you should be. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a series of betrayals in a text message thread. I'm sorry, man, Tommy said quietly. Yeah, me too. I forwarded the messages to my own phone and deleted the evidence from Tommy's laptop. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know yet. Want some advice? Sure. Don't do anything stupid and don't do anything you can't undo. I drove home and sat in my workshop, staring at the tools that had always provided comfort and purpose. Everything had its place, its function, its reason for existing. Unlike my marriage, which had apparently become a lie, I was the last to understand. Ashley came home at her usual time, full of excitement about the Peterson presentation's success. She kissed my cheek and chattered about Richard's brilliant strategy, his confidence in her abilities, his plans for her future at the firm. He wants to take me to the regional marketing conference in Boston next month, she said. It's a huge opportunity. Just the 2 of you? Well, yes. He thinks I'm ready to represent the firm at that level. I'm sure he does. She looked at me sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I think it's great that Richard has so much confidence in you. He does. He believes in me. And I don't? I didn't say that. But you thought it. Ashley set down her wine glass and turned to face me fully. Mark, what's wrong with you lately? You've been acting strange for weeks. Strange how? Suspicious. Sarcastic. Like you're angry about something but won't say what. Maybe I am angry. About what? I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But something fundamental had changed, something that couldn't be fixed with tools and patience and good intentions. About being treated like a stranger in my own life, I said. That's ridiculous. Is it? When's the last time we had dinner together? Really together? Not with you checking your phone every 5 minutes? I've been busy with work. When's the last time we talked about anything besides your job, your boss, your career? My career is important to me. More important than us? That's not fair. Isn't it? Ashley stood up, her face flushed with anger. I can't believe you're making me feel guilty for being successful, for having ambition. I'm not making you feel guilty for being successful. I'm asking you to remember that you have a husband who loves you. I know you love me. Do you? Because lately, it feels like I'm just part of the furniture. Something that's always been here, so you don't really see it anymore. That's not true? Then prove it. How? Cancel the Boston trip. The words hung in the air between us. Ashley's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, calculation. I can't do that, she said finally. Can't or won't. It's important for my career. And what about our marriage? Is that important? Of course it is. But I shouldn't have to choose between my husband and my job. You're right. You shouldn't. But that's not really the choice you're making, is it? Ashley stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. I don't know what you think is going on, she said quietly. I think you're having an affair with Richard Hall. The words came out calmly, matter-of-factly, like I was commenting on the weather. Ashley's face went pale, then flushed red. That's insane. How could you even think that? Because I'm not blind, Ashley, and I'm not stupid. Richard is my boss. We work together, that's all. Do you work together at his condo? Because Mrs. Langley saw your car there last Saturday night. I was dropping off files. At midnight? It was an emergency. Was Sunday morning an emergency too? And Tuesday afternoon? Ashley's composure cracked. You've been spying on me? I've been trying to understand why my wife has become a stranger. I haven't become a stranger. I've become successful, and apparently you can't handle that. This isn't about your success, Ashley. This is about your lies. I haven't lied to you. I pulled out my phone and read from her text messages. Mark doesn't deserve you. I know, but it's complicated. It doesn't have to be. Ashley's face went white. You read my private messages? Your messages with your lover, you mean? How dare you violate my privacy like that? How dare you violate our marriage? We stared at each other across the kitchen that had once been the heart of our home. Ashley was breathing hard, her hands clenched into fists. I want you to leave, she said. This is my house too. I want you to leave tonight. Go stay with Tommy or Derek or whoever. I need time to think. About what? About whether you want to stay married to me or run off with your boss? About whether I can forgive you for not trusting me. Trust? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about trust? I'm not having this conversation anymore. Not tonight. She turned and walked toward the stairs, then paused. For what it's worth, she said without turning around, you're right about one thing. I have changed. I've remembered what it feels like to be appreciated, to be valued, to be with someone who sees my potential instead of just seeing a wife. And what do I see when I look at you, Ashley? A woman who's outgrown her life. She went upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the wreckage of our marriage scattered around me like broken glass. I packed a bag and drove to Tommy's house. He took one look at my face and opened a beer without asking questions. Couch is yours as long as you need it, he said. Thanks. Want to talk about it? She's leaving me for him. You sure about that? Yeah, I'm sure. We sat in silence, drinking beer and watching late-night television. Finally, Tommy spoke. What are you going to do? I thought about Ashley upstairs in our bedroom, probably texting Richard about our fight. I thought about Richard, smug and confident in his expensive condo, thinking he'd won. I thought about the life I'd built, the marriage I'd believed in, the future I'd planned. I'm going to remind them both that they don't know me as well as they think they do. Mark, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything stupid. Then what? I finished my beer and looked at my oldest friend. I'm going to do something smart. I spent 3 days at Tommy's house, sleeping on his couch and trying to figure out my next move. Ashley called twice, once to ask when I was coming home, once to tell me she'd be staying at Melissa's for a few days, to think things through. Both conversations were cold, formal, like we were negotiating a business deal instead of trying to save our marriage. On Thursday morning, I drove to my lawyer's office. Janet Morrison had handled our house purchase and my business incorporation. She was sharp, practical, and had been divorced twice herself. "I'm sorry to hear about this, Mark," she said, after I'd explained the situation. "But I have to ask, what are your goals here?" "Goals? Do you want to save your marriage or end it? Because the strategy is different depending on your answer." I thought about that question for a long time. I want Ashley to understand what she's throwing away, and I want Richard Hall to understand that actions have consequences. Revenge, in other words. Justice. Janet leaned back in her chair. "Mark, I've known you for 8 years. You're one of the most decent men I've ever met. Don't let this situation turn you into someone you're not." "What if who I've been wasn't working?" "What do you mean? What if being decent and trusting and patient just made me an easy mark? What if the only way to get respect is to demand it?" "There are legal ways to demand respect. We can file for divorce, ask for alimony, divide the assets." "I don't want alimony. I want them to understand that they can't just discard people without consequences." "What kind of consequences?" I'd been thinking about that question for 3 days. The kind that hurt without breaking any laws. Janet was quiet for a moment. "I can't advise you to do anything illegal or unethical. I'm not asking you to. But if you were to, hypothetically, make their lives more difficult through perfectly legal means, hypothetically, I'd remind you to document everything, avoid direct confrontation, and never do anything that could be construed as harassment or stalking. Hypothetically. Hypothetically. I left Janet's office with a clearer sense of direction. Ashley and Richard thought they held all the cards, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. That afternoon, I drove to the community college, where I'd taken business courses years ago. The library had computers with internet access, and no connection to my personal accounts. I spent 2 hours researching Richard Hall. What I found was interesting. Richard had been married until 2 years ago. His divorce had been messy, involving accusations of adultery and financial misconduct. His ex-wife had received a substantial settlement, and according to court records, Richard had been ordered to pay ongoing alimony. More interesting was his business history. Hall Marketing Solutions had been struggling before Ashley joined the firm. Several former employees had left negative reviews on job sites, complaining about Richard's inappropriate behavior and unprofessional relationships with female staff. I made notes and printed relevant documents. Knowledge was power, and I was starting to feel powerful again. Friday evening, I drove to the Lantern. I needed to be seen around town to establish that I was handling the separation with dignity. Small towns thrived on gossip, and I wanted to control the narrative. Julia Martinez was there, sitting alone at the bar. She waved me over. "Mark, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine. These things happen." "I heard Ashley moved out. Temporarily. She's staying with Melissa while we work things out." Julia studied my face. "Are you working things out?" "That remains to be seen. For what it's worth, I think she's making a mistake." "Why do you say that?" "Because Richard Hall is a predator. He's done this before." I turned to look at her directly. "Done what before?" The married woman thing. The mentoring that turns into an affair. The promises about career advancement. You sound like you speak from experience. Julia laughed bitterly. Not me, but I wasn't his first target at the firm. There was a woman named Sarah Collins, about 3 years ago. Married, talented, ambitious. Richard gave her the same treatment. Late nights, special projects, promises about partnership. What happened to her? She left her husband. Richard lost interest about 6 months later. Sarah ended up leaving the firm, and last I heard she was working for a small agency in Portland, making half what she made here. And Richard? Richard moved on to the next conquest, until Ashley came along. I bought Julia another drink and listened to more stories about Richard's pattern of behavior. By the time I left the Lantern, I had a much clearer picture of what Ashley was walking into. Saturday morning, I drove back to my house to pick up more clothes. Ashley's car wasn't there, but I could see signs of her recent presence. Coffee cup in the sink, mail sorted on the counter, her favorite throw blanket folded neatly on the couch. I was packing a suitcase when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the bedroom window, I saw Richard's BMW pulling up behind my truck. He got out alone, straightened his jacket, and walked to the front door like he owned the place. I met him on the porch. Richard, this is a surprise. Mark, I was hoping we could talk. About what? About the situation. Between you and Ashley. What situation would that be? Richard smiled his practiced smile. Look, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Ashley and I, we've developed feelings for each other. Have you? We didn't plan for it to happen, but sometimes these things are bigger than we are. These things. Love, Mark. I'm in love with your wife, and she's in love with me. I leaned against the porch railing, studying Richard's face. He looked confident, almost smug, like he was delivering good news instead of destroying my life. That's quite an admission, I said. I believe in being direct. Ashley and I want to be together, and we think it would be better for everyone if we handled this like civilized people. Civilized. I know this is difficult for you, but Ashley hasn't been happy for a long time. You must have noticed. What I've noticed is that my wife started having an affair with her boss. It's not just an affair, Mark. It's real. We're talking about marriage. Marriage. After your divorce is final, of course, we want to do this right. I looked at Richard Hall, successful, confident, used to getting what he wanted. He stood on my porch, in front of the house I'd renovated with my own hands, telling me he was going to marry my wife. You want to do this right, I repeated. Yes. The right way would have been for Ashley to ask for a divorce before she started sleeping with you. Richard's smile faltered slightly. These situations are never simple. No, they're not. But they can be made simpler. What do you mean? I mean, you're going to stop seeing my wife. Richard laughed. I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Why not? Because Ashley doesn't want me to stop seeing her. She wants to be with me, Mark. She's chosen me. Has she? She has. And frankly, I think you should accept that and move on. There's no point in making this harder than it needs to be. I pushed off the porch railing and stepped closer to Richard. He was taller than me, but I had 40 pounds on him and 20 years of hard physical work. He stepped back instinctively. You think I should just accept it, I said. I think you should be realistic. Ashley is a remarkable woman. She deserves someone who can match her ambition, someone who can give her the life she wants. Someone like you. Yes. Someone who's already been divorced once for cheating on his wife. Richard's confident expression cracked. That situation was different. Was it? Or do you just have a pattern of destroying marriages? I think this conversation is over. I think you're right. Richard turned to leave, then paused. Mark, I hope you won't make this difficult. For Ashley's sake. For Ashley's sake? She cares about you. She doesn't want to hurt you more than necessary. How considerate of her. I'm serious. Don't make us get lawyers involved. Don't make this ugly. I smiled at him, and something in my expression made him take another step back. Richard, I said, you have no idea how ugly I can make this. After he left, I sat on my porch for a long time thinking about the conversation. Richard Hall was used to getting his way through charm, manipulation, and the assumption that other people would simply accept his decisions. He was about to learn that Mark Avery wasn't other people. I pulled out my phone and called Derek, my younger brother. Derek was 38, single, and had inherited the family talent for creative problem-solving. He also had a degree in computer science and a somewhat flexible relationship with conventional morality. Big brother, how's married life? Complicated. I need your help with something. Legal help or illegal help? Legal, mostly. My favorite kind. What do you need? I need to make some people very uncomfortable without actually breaking any laws. Derek was quiet for a moment. This about Ashley? Ashley and her boss. Ah, the affair. You knew? I suspected. She's been different lately, distant, and she mentioned this Richard guy about 50 times at Mom's birthday party. Why didn't you say anything? Because you're my brother, and I figured you'd tell me when you were ready to deal with it. I'm ready. Good. Because I've been waiting for you to get mad about something for about 20 years. Derek arrived that evening with a laptop bag and a case of beer. We sat in my workshop, and I explained what I wanted to accomplish. So let me get this straight, Derek said. You want to destroy their reputations, their relationship, and their careers, but you don't want to break any laws. That's right. And you want them to know it was you. Eventually. Derek grinned. I like it. It's like chess, but with real consequences. We spent the next 3 hours planning what Derek called Operation Consequences. By the time he left, we had a detailed strategy that would unfold over several weeks, each move designed to increase pressure while maintaining complete legal cover. Phase 1 would begin Monday morning. Richard Hall and Ashley thought they were playing a simple game. Steal the husband's wife, discard the husband, move on with their lives. They were about to discover they'd been playing by the wrong rules entirely. Monday morning, I drove to the Peterson Hardware corporate office in Bangor. Tom Peterson had given me his card at the community center event, suggesting I call about renovation work for his new stores. It was time to make that call in person. Tom's office was practical and unpretentious, like the man himself. He greeted me with a firm handshake and coffee in a mug that had seen better days. Mark, good to see you again. How's the contracting business? Busy. I've been thinking about your expansion project. Excellent. We're looking at 3 new locations, Ellsworth, Bar Harbor, and Camden. All need complete interior renovation. We spent an hour discussing timelines, budgets, and specifications. The projects were substantial. Easily 6 months of work and more money than I'd made in the past 2 years combined. This sounds like exactly what I'm looking for, I said. But I should mention something before we move forward. What's that? There might be some personal complications with Hall Marketing Solutions. Tom raised an eyebrow. How so? Ashley, my wife, works there. We're going through some marital difficulties, and her boss, Richard Hall, is involved. Tom's expression darkened. Involved how? They're having an affair. Jesus, I'm sorry to hear that. I wanted you to know because Richard might try to use your business relationship with his firm to influence this project. What do you mean? I mean, he might suggest that hiring me would be awkward, given the personal situation. He might recommend other contractors. Tom leaned back in his chair. Let me tell you something about Richard Hall. I've worked with a lot of marketing people over the years, and most of them are decent folks trying to do their jobs. But Hall, there's something about him I don't like. Too smooth, too eager to please. Makes me wonder what he's really after. I can't speak to his professional abilities, But you can speak to his personal character. I can speak to the fact that he's sleeping with my wife. Tom was quiet for a moment. Mark, I like you. You're straightforward, you know your business, and you don't try to bullshit me. As far as I'm concerned, your personal life is your business. If you can do the work on time and on budget, you've got the contract. Even if it complicates your relationship with hall marketing? Son, I've been in business for 40 years. I've learned to separate personal feelings from professional decisions, but I've also learned to judge people by their character. We shook hands on a deal that would transform my business and provide the financial independence I'd need for whatever came next. Tuesday morning, Derek called with an update on his research. I've been digging into Richard's finances, he said. Very interesting stuff. Legal digging? Completely legal. Public records, business filings, credit reports he's authorized for various loans. What did you find? Your boy Richard is in deeper financial trouble than he lets on. The divorce settlement with his ex-wife was brutal. He's paying her $3,000 a month in alimony, plus he had to give her half his assets. That's gotta hurt. It gets better. Hall Marketing Solutions is leveraged to the eyeballs. He took out a massive loan last year to renovate the office and hire new staff. The payments are killing him. How do you know all this? Because I applied for a job there. Amazing what information they ask for on employment applications these days. I laughed, despite everything. You applied for a job at Ashley's firm? Junior web developer position. I'm actually qualified for it, which makes the whole thing even funnier. What's the point? The point is that Richard Hall is living paycheck to paycheck, just like the rest of us. He's not the successful executive he pretends to be. He's a guy drowning in debt who's trying to maintain an expensive lifestyle he can't afford. This information gave me an idea. Derek, how hard would it be to find out which clients are thinking about leaving the firm? Probably not hard at all. Why? Because unhappy clients might be interested in hearing about alternative marketing solutions. You thinking about starting a marketing firm? I'm thinking about making Richard's financial situation even more complicated. Wednesday afternoon, I had lunch with Julia Martinez. She'd called Tuesday night, asking if I wanted to talk about the situation at work. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the business district where we might run into Ashley or Richard. How are you holding up? Julia asked. Better than expected. How are things at the firm? Tense. Ashley's been distracted. Richard's been acting like he owns the place and everyone knows something's going on. What kind of something? The kind where the boss is sleeping with his employee and they're not as discreet as they think they are. Julia told me about hushed conversations, closed-door meetings, and the general atmosphere of discomfort that had settled over the office. Melissa's been trying to cover for Ashley, she said, making excuses when she's late, handling her client calls when she's in Richard's office with the door locked. That's loyal of her. Melissa's a good friend, but she's also a smart businesswoman. She knows this situation is going to blow up eventually. How so? Because Richard's wife called the office yesterday. I nearly choked on my coffee. His wife? Ex-wife, technically. But she was asking a lot of questions about Richard's work schedule, his travel plans, his business relationships. What did she want? I think she's trying to prove he's violating their divorce agreement somehow. Maybe the alimony terms, maybe something about hiding assets. This was an unexpected development. Did she talk to Ashley? Ashley wasn't in the office. She was at a client meeting with Richard. Of course she was. Julia leaned forward. Mark, I need to tell you something. About Richard. What about him? He's not the successful businessman he pretends to be. The firm is in trouble. We lost 2 major clients last month, and there are rumors about unpaid bills. What kind of rumors? The kind where vendors are demanding payment up front, and Richard's been asking employees to defer their vacation pay until cash flow improves. I filed this information away with everything else Derek had discovered. Richard Hall was building his new life on a foundation of debt and deception. There's something else, Julia said. About Ashley. What about her? She's been asking questions about you, about your business, your finances, your assets. What kind of questions? The kind someone asks when they're planning a divorce. She wanted to know if you owned your equipment outright, whether you had any business debts, what your annual income was. And you told her? I told her to ask you herself. I thanked Julia for lunch and the information. As I drove home, I thought about Ashley's questions. She was already planning our divorce, already calculating what she'd be entitled to in a settlement. It was time to accelerate my own timeline. Thursday morning, I called a meeting with Tom Peterson and 2 other potential clients I'd been courting. I presented them with a proposal for a new marketing cooperative, local businesses pooling their resources to hire independent contractors for marketing services, cutting out the expensive middleman firms like Hall Marketing Solutions. The idea is simple, I explained. Instead of paying premium rates to a firm that subcontracts most of the actual work anyway, you hire specialists directly and coordinate the projects yourselves. What kind of savings are we talking about? Tom asked. Typically 40 to 60%. Plus, you get more control over the process and direct relationships with the people doing the work. By the end of the meeting, I had commitments from 3 businesses to try the cooperative model. More importantly, I had their permission to approach other Hall marketing clients with the same proposal. Friday afternoon, I drove to Ashley's temporary home at Melissa's apartment. It was time for a conversation. Ashley answered the door looking tired and defensive. "Mark, what are you doing here? We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea. It's not about us. It's about practical matters." She reluctantly let me in. Melissa was at work, so we had privacy. "What practical matters?" Ashley asked. "Divorce." The word hung in the air between us. Ashley's composure cracked slightly. "Is that what you want?" "It's what you want. I'm just acknowledging reality." "Mark, Ashley, you're sleeping with your boss. You've moved out of our house. You're asking mutual friends about my finances. Let's not pretend this is about anything other than ending our marriage." She sat down heavily on Melissa's couch. "It doesn't have to be ugly." "Doesn't it? We can be civilized about this, divide things fairly, move on with our lives. The way you and Richard have been civilized about your affair? That's different. How?" Because I fell in love with someone else. It wasn't planned, it just happened." "And what about the 12 years we've been married? Did those just unhappen?" Ashley looked at me with something that might have been regret. "Those years mattered, but people change, Mark. I've changed. You certainly have. I need more than what we had. I need someone who understands my ambitions, who can match my energy. Someone like Richard." "Yes. Someone who's been divorced once already for cheating on his wife." "That's not—" Richard explained that situation to me. It was complicated." "I'm sure it was." Ashley stood up, her defensive walls back in place. "I didn't ask for this to happen, but now that it has, I want to handle it maturely." "Maturely?" "Yes. We can file no-fault divorce papers, split our assets 50-50, and move on." "What about the house?" "We'll sell it and split the proceeds." "And my business?" "That's yours. I don't want any part of it." I looked at Ashley, my wife of 12 years, the woman I'd planned to grow old with, and realized I was looking at a stranger. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" "Okay, let's do it your way. Civilized, mature, 50-50. Ashley looked surprised. "Really?" "Really. I'll call Janet Morrison tomorrow and have her draw up papers." "Just like that?" "Just like that." I stood to leave, then turned back. "Ashley?" "Yes?" "I hope Richard is everything you think he is." "What's that supposed to mean?" It means I hope you're making the right choice. I left Melissa's apartment and drove to the Lantern. Derek was waiting for me, along with Tommy and a few other friends who'd heard about the separation. "How'd it go?" Derek asked. "She wants a civilized divorce. And you agreed?" "I agreed." Tommy raised his beer. "To civilization." "To civilization," we all replied. But as I drank with my friends and accepted their support, I was thinking about phase 2 of Derek's plan. Ashley wanted civilization, but she'd chosen to have an affair instead of asking for a divorce. Richard wanted my wife, but he'd decided to take her instead of waiting for her to be free. They'd both made their choices. Now, they'd live with the consequences. And those consequences were about to become very, very civilized. The divorce papers were filed on Monday. By Wednesday, the entire town knew about Ashley's affair. I hadn't said a word to anyone beyond my closest friends, but in a place like Millbrook, secrets had a way of becoming public knowledge. Mrs. Langley stopped by Thursday morning while I was loading tools into my truck. "Mark, dear, I'm so sorry to hear about your troubles." "Thank you, Mrs. Langley. These things happen. That boss of hers should be ashamed of himself, breaking up a marriage like that. People make their own choices. Some people have no sense of decency. In my day, a man who interfered with another man's marriage would be run out of town." Different times. Indeed. Well, if there's anything I can do. Actually, there is something. Mrs. Langley's eyes lit up. She loved being helpful, especially when it involved other people's drama. "What's that, dear?" "Richard Hall's ex-wife has been trying to reach him about some legal matter. If you happen to see her around town, could you let her know he spends most evenings at Melissa Chen's apartment complex? Ashley's been staying there and he visits regularly." "Of course, dear. Always happy to help with legal matters." I finished loading my truck and drove to the Peterson hardware project in Ellsworth. The work was going well, and Tom had been telling other business owners about the quality of my craftsmanship. Word was spreading that Mark Avery was a contractor you could trust. Friday afternoon, Derek called with an update. "Phase 2 is complete," he said. "Results?" "Richard's ex-wife served him with papers yesterday. Seems she's petitioning the court to increase his alimony payments based on evidence that his income has increased substantially." "Has it?" "Not really. But she's arguing that his lifestyle suggests hidden assets. The affair with Ashley is being presented as evidence that he's been dishonest about his financial situation." "Clever. It gets better. She's also claiming that his relationship with Ashley represents a violation of the morality clause in their divorce agreement." "There was a morality clause?" "Apparently. Richard agreed not to cohabitate with anyone for 2 years after the divorce. Having an affair with a married woman could be interpreted as a violation." "What's the penalty for violation?" "Immediate termination of alimony payments and return of certain assets." I whistled softly. That would hurt. It would destroy him financially. He's been counting on those alimony payments ending naturally in 6 months. If they stop now and he has to pay back money, let's just say Richard's going to need a very good lawyer. Saturday morning, I was working in my shop when Ashley's car pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, looking exhausted and defeated. "We need to talk," she said. "Come on in." She followed me into the workshop, looking around at the organized tools and half-finished projects. "I always loved this space," she said. "It smells like you." "Sawdust and motor oil?" "Safety, competence, like you could fix anything." "Not anything." Ashley sat on my workbench, something she'd done countless times during our marriage when she wanted to talk while I worked. "Richard's having some legal problems," she said. "I heard. His ex-wife is trying to cause trouble. She's claiming he violated their divorce agreement." "Did he?" "Not technically, but she's twisting things, making it sound worse than it is." "How much worse?" "She wants him to pay back 2 years of alimony, plus penalties. It's over $100,000. I continued sanding the piece of oak I'd been working on. That's a lot of money. "He doesn't have it. The business is leveraged, and most of his assets are tied up in investments. Sounds like a problem. Ashley was quiet for a moment. Mark, did you know about this? About his ex-wife's plans? Why would I know about Richard's legal problems? Because the timing is suspicious. She filed these papers right after our separation became public. Coincidences happen. Do they? Or did someone give her information about Richard's personal life? I looked up from my sanding. Are you accusing me of something? I'm asking if you're trying to sabotage Richard. Ashley, I'm trying to rebuild my life after my wife left me for another man. Richard's legal problems are his own concern. But if he's financially ruined, it affects me too. How so? Because we're planning a future together. Because I love him. And you want me to help him? I want you to stop hurting him. I set down my sandpaper and looked at Ashley directly. I'm not hurting Richard, but I'm not helping him either. Why should I? Because you're a good man. Because you don't want to see people destroyed, even if they've hurt you. People like you? People like both of us. I walked to my tool cabinet and selected a different grade of sandpaper. Ashley, you made a choice. You chose Richard over me, your career over our marriage, your future over our past. Those were your decisions. I know. And now you want me to protect you from the consequences of those decisions. I want you to be the man I married, the man who fixes things. Some things can't be fixed. Richard and I could lose everything. You could, but that's not my problem anymore. Ashley slid off the workbench and moved closer to me. Mark, please. I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But don't let your anger destroy innocent people. Innocent people? Richard didn't know his ex-wife would do this. Richard didn't know a lot of things, apparently, like the fact that actions have consequences. What's that supposed to mean? It means that when you sleep with another man's wife, you can't control what happens next. When you break up a marriage, you can't predict who else might get involved. Ashley stared at me for a long moment. You did this. You contacted his ex-wife. I've never spoken to Richard's ex-wife. But you found a way to let her know about us. Ashley, your affair isn't a secret. Half the town knows about it. If Richard's ex-wife found out, it could have been from anyone. It was you. Prove it. We looked at each other across the workshop, and I saw the exact moment when Ashley realized that the man she'd married, the patient, forgiving, accommodating man she'd taken for granted, was gone. I don't know you anymore, she said. Good, because the man you knew was a fool. Mark, the man you knew let you walk all over him for months. He ignored the signs, made excuses for your behavior, and convinced himself that love was enough to save a marriage. Love is enough. No, Ashley, love isn't enough. Respect is enough. Honesty is enough. Commitment is enough. But love by itself? Love is just a feeling. And feelings change. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. And now you want me to pretend it doesn't matter. I want you to forgive me. I have forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean I have to help you clean up the mess you made. What about Richard? He doesn't deserve this. What does he deserve? A chance to be happy. With my wife. With me. Yes. I picked up my sandpaper and went back to work. Then I guess you'd better figure out how to solve his legal problems, because I'm done solving problems for people who don't appreciate the effort. Ashley stood there for another minute, then walked toward the door. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. Sunday morning, Derek called with the final update. It's done, he said. All of it? All of it. Richard's legal problems are just the beginning. 3 of his biggest clients have decided not to renew their contracts. The Peterson hardware account is switching to your marketing cooperative, and the word around town is that Hall Marketing Solutions is finished. What about Ashley? She's been calling in sick to work. Melissa says she's barely eating, barely sleeping. The whole situation is falling apart. And Richard? Richard is trying to sell his condo to pay his ex-wife. He's also been making calls to other marketing firms, looking for a job. Any takers? Not so far. Turns out his reputation has taken a hit. Amazing how fast word spreads in the business community. I hung up the phone and sat in my kitchen, looking out at the October landscape. The leaves were turning, painting the hills in brilliant reds and golds. It was beautiful and temporary, like everything else in life. My phone rang. Ashley's number. "Mark, please. We need to talk." "We talked yesterday." "Richard wants to meet with you, to apologize, to see if we can work something out." "Work what out?" "Some kind of arrangement. Maybe he could pay you back for the pain we caused." "How much is my pain worth, Ashley?" "I don't know." "What would it take?" I thought about that question. What would it take to undo 12 years of marriage? To repair the trust that had been broken? To restore the future that had been stolen? "It would take a time machine," I said, "and those don't exist." "Mark." "Ashley, it's over. The marriage is over, Richard's business is over, and this conversation is over. You made your choices, and now you get to live with them." "But I love you." The words hung in the air, and for just a moment, I felt the old pull, the old desire to fix things and make them right. "No," I said. "You love the idea of me. You love having a safety net. But you don't love me enough to choose me." "That's not true." "If it's not true, then leave Richard and come home." Silence. "That's what I thought," I said, and hung up the phone. Monday morning, I drove downtown to sign the final divorce papers. Janet Morrison's office was warm and professional, a stark contrast to the cold legal language that was dissolving my marriage. "You sure about this?" Janet asked. "It's not too late to try counseling." "I'm sure. Ashley gets half the house proceeds, but you keep your business and all your tools and equipment." "That's fair. She also waives any claim to alimony." "Good." Janet looked up from the papers. "Mark, I have to ask. Did you have anything to do with Richard Hall's legal problems?" "Why would you ask that?" "Because the timing is awfully convenient, and because I've known you long enough to recognize when you're planning something." I signed my name on the divorce decree and slid it back across the desk. "Janet, I'm a simple contractor who fixes broken things. Richard Hall's problems are way above my pay grade." "Uh-huh. Besides, I've been too busy with the Peterson hardware project to worry about other people's legal issues." "The Peterson project that used to be Hall Marketing's biggest account. Coincidences happen?" Janet shook her head and notarized the papers. "Mark Avery, you are not the simple man you pretend to be." "No," I agreed. "I'm not." That evening I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the sun set over the hills. The house felt different now. Not empty, but peaceful, like a weight had been lifted. Tommy's truck pulled into the driveway, followed by Derek's car. They got out carrying pizza and more beer. "Figured you might want some company," Tommy said. "Always." We sat on the porch, eating pizza and talking about everything except Ashley and Richard. It felt good to laugh again, to be around people who knew me and liked me anyway. As the evening wound down, Derek asked the question I'd been expecting. "So what's next?" "Next? Now that you've systematically destroyed your ex-wife's lover and reclaimed your life, what do you do for an encore?" I thought about that question. For months, I'd been focused on revenge, on making Ashley and Richard understand that their actions had consequences. But now that it was over, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. "Now I build something new," I said. "Like what?" "Like a life that doesn't depend on other people's choices. Like a business that's successful because I make it successful, not because someone else allows it to be." "And personally?" "Personally, I'm going to remember what it feels like to be respected." Tommy raised his beer. "To respect." "To respect. Derek and I replied. As my friends drove away, I stayed on the porch, thinking about the past few months. Ashley had chosen Richard because she thought he could give her a bigger life, more excitement, greater success. Instead, she'd gotten legal problems, financial ruin, and social disgrace. Richard had chosen to pursue a married woman because he thought he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. Instead, he'd lost his business, his reputation, and his financial security. They'd both underestimated the quiet man who fixed things for a living. They'd assumed that patience meant weakness, that kindness meant stupidity, that forgiveness meant they could keep taking without ever giving back. They'd been wrong. I finished my beer and went inside, locking the door behind me. Tomorrow I'd start the next phase of my life, the phase where Mark Avery wasn't just the man who fixed other people's problems, but the man who built his own solutions. It was going to be a good life, and I was going to build it myself.